The older you grow, the quieter you must become, because peace is built not by what you share, but by what you protect. My friends, life teaches us many lessons, but age teaches us the rarest ones. As we grow older, we realize that not everything is meant to be spoken, not every truth is meant to be shared, and not every thought deserves an audience. With time, you begin to value peace over praise, dignity over discussion, and wisdom over winning arguments. So today, let us reflect on 8 things you should never share with anyone in your old age, not out of fear, not out of ego, but out of wisdom. As we grow older, life begins to whisper a deeper kind of wisdom to us, one that cannot be learned from books, one that cannot be memorized in classrooms, one that doesn't come from motivational speeches, but from experiences that have touched our hearts, broken our expectations, and shaped our understanding. And among all those lessons, one of the most important is this: never share your financial details with anyone. Not because money is everything, but because the wrong conversations about money can quietly steal away the peace you've spent decades building. You see, money carries energy. For some, it becomes a reason to respect you. For some, it becomes a reason to use you. And for some, it becomes a reason to distance themselves from you. But the truth is, your financial life is one of the most misunderstood parts of your existence. When people think you have more, expectations begin to form. When people think you have less, judgments begin to form. Either way, peace gets disturbed and relationships become complicated over something that should remain private. I once met an elderly gentleman at a spiritual retreat. He was calm, composed, and carried a graceful dignity about him. After one of the sessions, he sat with me and shared a small story, something that had changed his relationships forever. He said, "All my life, I worked hard and lived simply. I saved where I could. I invested carefully. I never made a show of what I had. But one day, in a moment of innocence, I mentioned a small detail about my bank balance to a relative. He smiled painfully before continuing. From that day, my life became noisy. People who never called me suddenly remembered me. People who never visited suddenly wanted to spend time with me. And people who never cared about my health suddenly cared about my money." He looked into the distance and said, "That day I understood. It's not money that makes noise. It's people's minds." His words stayed with me, because when you share your financial details intentionally or unintentionally, you invite others into a space that was never meant for them. You allow opinions, suggestions, and unnecessary influences to enter your inner world. And in old age, friends, the last thing you need is pressure. Pressure to give, pressure to spend, pressure to help beyond your capacity, pressure to live up to the version of who that exists in someone else's imagination. When someone knows you're financially comfortable, they may assume you can solve their problems. When someone thinks you're not financially strong, they may treat you differently, as if your worth is tied to a number in your account. Both situations take away your dignity. The quiet truth is, money conversations can sometimes change the way people look at you. They may not say it openly, but subtly, gradually, silently, the relationship shifts. Expectations take birth, assumptions grow, and misunderstandings multiply. Something that was once pure becomes complicated simply because a part of your life became visible to those who were not prepared to understand it. Money should be a tool for living, not a topic for gossip. It should give you comfort, not discomfort. It should help you breathe easier, not heavier, and most importantly, it should remain something sacred, something you manage with wisdom, discipline, and discretion. As you grow older, your priority is peace, not praise, stability, not show, security, not social approval. And peace comes when you keep certain things close to your chest. Your finances are one of them. Your bank balance, your investments, your savings, your debts. These are not public stories, they are private realities. They are part of the foundation that keeps you standing strong. You don't need anyone's validation to justify how you live, what you own, or how you manage your money. Speak only to those who must know: your financial advisor, your spouse, the person responsible for handling your affairs if something happens to you. Beyond that, your financial world should remain like the roots of a tree, strong, hidden, silently nourishing your life without seeking anyone's attention. Silence doesn't mean secrecy. Silence means wisdom. It means choosing what to share and what to protect. Your peace is too precious to be placed in the hands of people who may not value your boundaries. So protect it, guard it, hold it sacred. Because in old age, peace is wealth and silence is strength. When we grow older, one of the most delicate lessons life teaches us is the importance of protecting the sacred space called family. And one of the biggest mistakes we can make, often unknowingly, often out of frustration or loneliness, or the need to unburden ourselves, is sharing our family conflicts with outsiders. It feels harmless in the moment. It feels relieving to talk. It feels comforting to express what's hurting within the walls of our hearts. But slowly, silently, unknowingly, it begins to damage relationships in ways that cannot be easily repaired. You see, every family has problems, misunderstandings, and disagreements. Even the most perfect-looking families on social media, even the most seemingly peaceful households, even the ones we admire from a distance, they all have storms behind closed doors. But those storms are temporary. They come, they shake things, they teach lessons, and eventually, they pass. The problem begins when we talk about those storms outside the home, because the moment we share family conflicts with people who were never part of the situation, we hand them the power to interpret, judge, and remember things that we ourselves will eventually forgive and forget. I once met an elderly lady who carried a gentle sadness in her eyes. She told me a story that felt like a universal reminder. She said, "When my son and daughter-in-law were young, they argued often. It bothered me, it hurt me, and one day, out of frustration, I shared it with a neighbor. I thought she would understand. I thought she would give me comfort. Instead, I gave her something else, information." She paused and continued, "My children resolved the issue in 2 days. They hugged, they apologized, they moved forward. But from that day on, the neighbor saw my daughter-in-law differently. She saw her as the girl who argued, not the girl who learned and grew. She saw my son as the man who lost his temper, not the man who changed and matured." Then she said something profound. "We forget our conflicts because love helps us forget. But outsiders never forget because they do not carry the love that we carry." Her words were simple, but they revealed a deep truth. Outsiders remember mistakes long after family members have healed from them. When we share our family conflicts with others, we allow perfect strangers to form opinions about the people we love the most. We invite them into a space they were never meant to enter. And sometimes their opinions start influencing our own. You might hear someone say, "Your daughter-in-law shouldn't behave that way," or "Your son should treat you better," or "Your brother is wrong." These comments, even if they come disguised as concern, start planting seeds of doubt, resentment, or insecurity. Suddenly, a small conflict becomes bigger, not because of what happened, but because of the voices that entered later. There is another danger. When we talk about family problems outside, people might talk back about us. They may twist stories. They may magnify details. They may repeat things we said in a moment of frustration, even after we have made peace with the situation. Gossip grows faster than truth, and the last thing you need in old age is becoming the subject of someone else's tea time conversations. Family conflicts are not meant for the world. They are meant to be handled within the four walls of love, patience, and understanding. Anger fades, ego softens, misunderstanding clears, and forgiveness heals. But once the outside world enters, healing becomes slow, and relationships become fragile. In old age, the greatest joy comes from harmony. Seeing your children speak to each other, seeing your spouse smile with peace, seeing your home filled with love, not tension. And harmony is built by protecting the dignity of your relationships. If you need to talk, speak to God. Speak to a therapist. Speak to someone who is guided by wisdom, confidentiality, and compassion. But avoid sharing your conflicts with those who neither understand your family dynamics nor have any responsibility in helping them heal. The home is a sacred place. Its fractures should be repaired from within, not exposed outside. Its vulnerabilities should be handled gently, not displayed casually. Because once dignity leaves a relationship, it doesn't return easily. So guard the privacy of your family. Guard its reputation. Guard its love. Guard its imperfections. Guard its stories. Not because the world is bad, but because the world does not carry your family's heart the way you do. When you protect your family's struggles, you protect your family's strength. When you heal within, you grow together. And when you keep your conflicts private, you honor the love that holds you all together. As we move into the later chapters of life, one truth begins to shine more clearly than ever before. The past is a place to learn from, not a place to live in, and certainly not a place to expose to everyone. There is a sacredness in the mistakes we have made, a quiet nobility in the lessons they taught us, and a deep beauty in the transformation they inspired. But sharing those old mistakes openly with people who have neither the heart to understand nor the maturity to hold our stories with compassion can become a source of unnecessary pain. Not everyone is ready to honor where you have come from. Not everyone can see who you have become beyond who you once were. When we're young, we want to be understood fully. We want people to know our struggles, our failures, our regrets, as if sharing them will make us more human or more relatable. But with age comes a gentler wisdom. People don't always respond to honesty with kindness. Some respond with judgment. Some respond with gossip. And some respond with a quiet shift in how they see you. A shift that may never be undone. I once met a retired school principal who had lived a life of service. He was respected, admired, and deeply loved by his community. One evening, during a long walk, he shared a moment of vulnerability. "You know," he said softly, "in my 20s I made a mistake, a big one. Nothing illegal, nothing harmful, but something I regretted deeply. Many years later, when I was in my 50s, I shared that story with a group of acquaintances thinking it would help them learn. Instead, the story became a label. They never looked at me the same again. My entire life's work, my growth, my transformation, all of it got overshadowed by one story I had long outgrown." He looked into the distance and said something profound. "I healed from that mistake decades ago, but the people I told never healed from hearing it." His voice carried both strength and sorrow, and what he said reveals a powerful truth. People often freeze us in the chapter of the story we share with them. Even if we've moved on, they hold on to that version of us, because it's all they know. That is why sharing past mistakes widely becomes dangerous, not because the past defines us, but because people may try to define us through it. The past is like a teacher that has already done its job. Once we have learned the lesson, we are meant to move on, but when we speak about our old wounds recklessly, we reopen what was healed. When we speak of our old regrets casually, we allow others to enter chapters they have no right to edit. And when we speak of our weaknesses too freely, we give the wrong people tools they can use to reshape how they treat us. It is important to understand that vulnerability is powerful, but only when shared with the right hearts. Not everyone is capable of holding your truth without turning it into a story for others. Not everyone has the maturity to see your growth beyond your mistakes. Not everyone has the tenderness to honor your journey instead of analyzing it. Old age is a time to preserve dignity, not reopen old doors. It is a time to walk with grace, not carry the weight of who you used to be. And it is a time to allow your past to become wisdom, not public content. This does not mean you hide your truth. It simply means you protect it, you honor it, you share it only with those who are capable of honoring you. There are people who will cherish your vulnerability. There are people who will hold your past like a sacred story. There are people who will understand that your mistakes were stepping stones, not definitions. But these people are rare, and they must be chosen carefully. We must remember that God does not define us by our mistakes. He defines us by our efforts to rise after them. Life is not measured by what went wrong, but by what we learned and how we transformed. And every day that we have lived beyond our old mistakes is a day of growth that deserves respect, not judgment. Your past belongs to you. Your mistakes belong to the person you once were. Your growth belongs to who you are now. And your peace belongs to your future. Don't hand any of that to people who cannot understand the depth of your evolution. In old age, carry your past gently, carry it privately, carry it as a silent teacher, not a public confession. Because when you honor your journey, you honor the divine grace that carried you through it. As we grow older, one of the most sensitive parts of our life becomes our health. Our body changes, our energy changes, our capacity changes, and our needs change. And in this stage, we often feel a natural desire to express what we are going through. Sometimes it comes from anxiety, sometimes from loneliness, and sometimes simply because pain feels lighter when shared. But with age comes a profound lesson. Not every detail of your health should be shared with everyone. Not because your struggles are shameful, but because your well-being deserves protection from unnecessary opinions, assumptions, and emotional burdens. You see, health is personal. It is intimate. It is something that affects you physically, mentally, and spiritually. And the world, unfortunately, does not always respond with compassion. Some people worry too much, and their worry creates more stress for you. Some people judge, and their judgment creates insecurity. Some people exaggerate, and their exaggeration creates rumors. And some, without meaning harm, repeat your private details in places where those details do not belong. Soon, something that was just a medical condition becomes a topic of public discussion. I once met an elderly gentleman who carried himself with grace despite battling several age-related issues. During a conversation, he shared a story that revealed a profound truth. He said, "When I first developed a heart condition, I made the mistake of telling everyone, every relative, every neighbor, every visitor." He paused before continuing. "Suddenly, people began treating me differently. Some stopped inviting me to gatherings. Some started giving me unsolicited advice every time they saw me. And some began speaking as if I was already preparing for my last days." He smiled gently and said, "That's when I realized it wasn't the illness that made life heavy, it was the reactions." What he said is something many elderly people quietly experience. When others know too much, your identity becomes tied to your condition. Instead of seeing you as a person with dreams, stories, wisdom, and life experience, they begin seeing you as someone defined by medical reports. You may be trying to live joyfully despite your challenges, but others may only see the challenge. And their fear, their pity, their assumptions begin to suffocate the peace you were trying to protect. Health conversations should be selective. Speak to your doctor because they understand the science. Speak to your caregiver because they understand your needs. Speak to your closest circle because they understand your heart. But not everyone deserves access to your physical vulnerabilities. Your health is not entertainment. It is not news. It is not content for casual conversation. There is another aspect to this. When you openly share every detail of your condition, you may unintentionally attract negativity. People may tell you worst-case scenarios. They may tell you stories of someone who suffered more. They may project their fears onto you. And before you realize it, your mental strength begins to weaken, not because of the illness, but because of the emotional weight others have placed on top of it. Silence sometimes becomes a form of healing. Not silence that hides pain, but silence that protects peace. You are not obligated to explain why you take medicine. You are not obligated to justify why you visit a doctor. You are not obligated to answer questions about your health to people who are simply curious, not caring. Your well-being is a sacred part of your life, and sacred things are not meant to be exposed to careless hands. Old age is a time for gentleness, a time where your mind needs encouragement, your heart needs comfort, and your spirit needs calm. The more you guard your health information, the more control you have over your own emotional environment. When fewer people know, fewer people interfere. When fewer people interfere, fewer stresses arise. And when stress reduces, healing becomes easier. This does not mean you isolate yourself. It means you choose wisely. You choose who understands, who supports, and who genuinely cares. Because you deserve to be surrounded not by panic, not by judgment, not by pity, but by wisdom, by faith, by calm, and by love. As you grow older, remember this: your health is part of your journey, not your identity. You are not a diagnosis. You are not a list of symptoms. You are not defined by what the doctors monitor. You are defined by the strength with which you live, the gratitude with which you breathe, and the grace with which you rise every day despite the challenges. Protect that grace. Protect that dignity. Protect your peace by protecting what you share. Your health is your sacred space. Guard it with wisdom and let only the right people enter. As we grow through life, there comes a stage where our dreams become more delicate, more precious, more personal. And in old age, our long-term plans, whatever they may be, become like fragile seeds. They need the right soil, the right silence, the right space to grow. And that is why one of the greatest lessons of later life is this: never share your long-term plans with everyone. Not because your dreams are unrealistic, not because you owe secrecy to the world, but because premature exposure can weaken the very thing you are trying to strengthen. The older you get, the more you realize that people don't always understand the dreams God places in your heart. Sometimes they doubt, sometimes they discourage, and sometimes they simply cannot comprehend why you still want to grow, learn, travel, build, or improve yourself at your age. And if you're not careful, other people's limited imagination can shrink your own. A dream that once felt sacred suddenly begins to feel foolish simply because someone else couldn't see its possibility. I once sat with an elderly woman at an ashram, someone with a bright spirit and a calm smile. She told me something that shifted the way I think about silence. In my 60s, she said, I wanted to start a small charity to feed children in my village. It was a simple dream. Nothing grand, nothing huge. I shared it with a few friends who laughed and said, at this age, why trouble yourself? Enjoy your rest. She looked down for a moment and added, those words stayed with me. I doubted myself. Why long-term plans, especially in the later years, must be protected like sacred treasures. When you share too soon, you expose your dreams to fear, ridicule, and negativity before they even have a chance to take form. It's like opening a pot before the seed has sprouted. The warmth escapes, the moisture disappears, and growth becomes difficult. In old age, your plans are not like youthful plans made from impulse or excitement. They are born from wisdom, reflection, and experience. They come from a lifetime of learning. They may be simple, but they are meaningful. They may be quiet, but they are powerful. Maybe you want to write a book. Maybe you want to start a small project. Maybe you want to visit holy places. Maybe you want to repair a relationship. Maybe you want to leave behind something of value. These plans, whatever they are, deserve protection from unnecessary voices. Silence isn't the absence of communication. Silence is the presence of clarity. When you keep your plans private, you give yourself time to think, time to adjust, time to grow them with care. You remove the pressure to explain yourself. You remove the noise of opinions. You remove the expectations that people may place on you. You simply move with God's timing and your own inner guidance. And here's another truth. People often see your age, but they don't see your spirit. They see your years, but they don't see your passion. They see your wrinkles, but they don't see your wisdom. So when you tell them a dream, they respond based on what they see externally, not what you feel internally. They may say, isn't it too late, or what's the point now? But they don't understand that dreams are not tied to age. They are tied to purpose. As long as you are breathing, your purpose is breathing with you. When you keep your long-term plans within yourself, or share them only with the rare few who genuinely support your growth, you create a beautiful space for your intentions to mature. It's like placing a lamp inside a glass case. It shines more brightly, safely, steadily. But expose it to strong winds, and the flame will flicker, struggle, or extinguish before fulfilling its purpose. Your dreams deserve gentleness. They deserve silence. They deserve the nurturing that comes when only God hears them. Because when the time is right, your results will speak louder than any announcement you could ever make. And when your plans unfold through quiet determination, the world will honor them naturally. In old age, never let anyone convince you that planning for the future is unnecessary. The future belongs to everyone who is alive, and your dreams are as valuable today as they were decades ago. Protect them, nurture them, move toward them quietly, confidently, faithfully. Let silence be your companion and purpose be your guide. When you honor your plans with privacy, you tell the world and yourself that your life still holds meaning, direction, and divine intentionality. And that the deepest truth of all. As we journey into the later stages of life, one of the most beautiful qualities we are blessed to develop is kindness. Years of experience soften the heart, pain turns into compassion, loss teaches us tenderness, and mistakes teach us humility. But with age also comes a quiet understanding. The purest acts of kindness are the ones that remain unspoken. The more you talk about the good you do, the more you dilute its essence. And that is why one of the golden rules of old age is this: never share your acts of kindness with others. Kindness is sacred. It is something done from the soul, not the ego. It is something done because it is right, not because it is noticed. And the moment we speak too broadly about the good we have done, a part of that purity fades. It's like holding a delicate flower in your hand. The more you show it to the world, the more fingerprints it collects, and the less fragrance it carries. I once met a retired gentleman who spent his days helping children from underprivileged families learn basic mathematics. He did it quietly, without any announcement, without posting anything online, and without ever mentioning it in casual conversations. When I asked him why he kept it so private, he smiled and said something profound. "The world does not need to know what my heart whispers to God." His words stayed with me, because when kindness seeks recognition, it is no longer kindness, it becomes performance. But when kindness is done in silence, it becomes devotion. There is something spiritually powerful about doing good without speaking of it. When you help someone without mentioning it to others, it becomes a private dialogue between you and the divine. It becomes a prayer expressed through action. It becomes a flower offered at the altar of humanity. But when you talk about it openly, "I gave this, I helped that person, I supported that family," it loses its fragrance. Not because the act becomes smaller, but because the ego becomes louder, and ego is the enemy of spiritual growth, especially in old age. At this stage of life, the heart longs for lightness, purity, surrender, humility, not applause, not acknowledgement, not validation. Life has already taught us that the world forgets quickly, but God remembers always. What you do in silence becomes your true legacy, because it is not printed in newspapers or posted on social media, it is written in the hearts you touch. Another danger of sharing your acts of kindness is that it can unintentionally hurt the dignity of the people you helped. Many elderly individuals, sometimes unknowingly, tell others that they financially supported a relative, or helped a neighbor, or provided for someone during a difficult time. They don't say it with pride, they say it casually or out of habit. But those words travel. And when they reach the person who received the help, it often brings embarrassment, shame, or hurt. The intention was pure, but the impact becomes painful. Protecting the dignity of those you help is just as important as helping them. Privacy is a gift you give along with kindness. Silence becomes a shield around their self-respect, and that silence creates a divine beauty around your actions. There is also a practical aspect. When people know you are generous, they might start expecting more. They may come to you not out of respect or love, but out of convenience. And slowly your kindness becomes an obligation in their eyes. This burdens your heart and exhausts your mind. The joy of giving disappears, replaced by the pressure of fulfilling expectations. But when your kindness is hidden, it remains joyful. It remains light. It remains for the sake of love, not recognition. Old age is a time for inner richness, not outer display. It is a time for soul work, not spotlight work. Silence becomes your greatest companion. When you give quietly, you grow spiritually. When you help silently, you connect with something larger than yourself. When you do good without speaking of it, you become a channel of divine grace rather than a collector of human praise. Remember what ancient wisdom says: the left hand should not know what the right hand gives. It means give so purely that even your own ego stays unaware. Such a way that only God sees. Give in such a way that the only reward you seek is the peace in your own heart. In the end, kindness is not what you speak about, kindness is what you leave behind. The world may never know the depth of your goodness, but the heavens always do. And that is enough. That is more than enough. As life moves forward and age blesses us with wisdom, one of the most delicate understandings we gain is this: not everyone is meant to know our weaknesses. Not everyone deserves access to our vulnerabilities. Not everyone has the character, the compassion, or the maturity to hold our fragile moments without judgment, gossip, or misuse. And that is why, in old age especially, you must become very careful about what parts of your heart you reveal and to whom you reveal them. There is a time in life, usually when we are young, when we believe that sharing everything makes relationships stronger. We think that the more open we are, the more loved we will feel. But as we grow older, we begin to see the world through a more honest lens. We realize that openness is not the same as intimacy. Vulnerability is not the same as trust. And the people who smile with us are not always the people who stand with us when we reveal the more fragile corners of our soul. Weakness is not something to be ashamed of. It is part of being human. Every person has fears, insecurities, regrets, disappointments, wounds, and emotional scars they carry quietly. But what we learn with age is that weakness, when placed in the wrong hands, becomes a weapon. Not literally, but emotionally. Some people use your vulnerabilities to feel superior. Some use them to gossip. Some use them to control you. And some, without even realizing it, begin to treat you differently, as if you are less capable than before. I once met an elderly man who had spent his entire life as a pillar of strength in his community. People admired him, they sought his advice. They looked up to him as a guide, a mentor, a friend. But when he retired and began facing loneliness and anxiety, he opened up to a few acquaintances he believed were close to him. He shared his fears, his doubts, his emotional struggles. Instead of receiving understanding, he found himself becoming the subject of whispered conversations. He's not doing well. He's not strong anymore. Be careful, he's emotionally unstable. These words found their way back to him, and they hurt him more deeply than the loneliness ever did. He told me later, I learned the hard way that vulnerability is precious, and you cannot hand something precious to people who don't know how to carry it gently. His voice carried both pain and wisdom, and that wisdom is something all of us need to remember. Weakness is not shameful, but exposing it carelessly is harmful. In old age, your mind becomes more sensitive, your heart becomes more delicate, and your emotions become more tender. And the last thing you need is someone mishandling your feelings. You deserve peace, not pity. You deserve respect, not judgment. You deserve understanding, not gossip. That is why you must choose your listeners carefully. Share only with those who have earned the right to hear your truth. Speak only to those whose hearts are deep enough to hold your story. Open up only to those who won't use your vulnerability as currency in their conversations. And sometimes the safest place to share your weaknesses is not with people at all, but with God. There is a comfort that comes from pouring your fears into a divine presence that never judges, never misuses, never exposes. The heart becomes lighter when God becomes the listener, and healing becomes easier when the soul feels understood beyond words. There is another side to this truth. When you openly share your weaknesses with too many people, they might slowly begin to treat you like you are fragile, even when you are not. They may underestimate your strength. They may make decisions on your behalf. They may speak to you with unnecessary sympathy. In trying to help you, they might unknowingly take away your sense of independence and inner power. But when your vulnerability stays in safe hands, you remain in control of your dignity. Old age is a stage where dignity matters more than almost anything else. You want to be seen not as someone who is breaking, but as someone who is evolving. Not as someone who is helpless, but as someone who is wise. Not as someone who is weak, but as someone who has endured life with courage. So protect your emotional space. Not from love, but from misunderstanding. Not from support, but from misuse. Not from compassion, but from curiosity. Guard your heart from those who cannot hold it gently. Guard your fears from those who cannot respect them. Guard your truths from those who have not grown enough to handle them with grace. Your weaknesses do not make you small.